Have you ever paused and truly asked yourself when or why Michael? Why is it that when Scripture speaks of cosmic battles, of dragons, of demons, of wars in heaven, it is always Michael who stands at the front, not Gabriel, who carries God's greatest messages, not Raphael, who brings healing, not the ancient seraphim who burn with holy fire, nor the mighty cherubim who once guarded Eden's gates. What makes Michael different? Some say he is simply heaven's general. Others say he is the sword of God himself. But could there be something deeper, something within Michael's very nature that makes him unbeatable? Because strength in heaven is not measured by muscle, but by obedience. Power is not measured by force, but by unyielding loyalty. And war is not won by might, but by the one who will never fall. Long before humanity, long before Eden, before the first star ever burned its light, there was a silent tension in the heavenly realms. A choice, a whisper of rebellion, a question, who is like God? And as one rose to challenge the throne, another rose to defend it. Michael did not fight for glory. He did not fight for title. He fought for something greater, truth, and that is why he could not be moved. But here's the real mystery. If Michael is heaven's champion, what kind of strength does God crown as strongest? Could it be that Michael's greatest power is something we too can carry? Before we dive deeper, make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon. You're watching Gospel Insights, where every mystery leads to revelation. Before the first breath of man, before the first river touched the earth, there was heaven, eternal, untainted, untouched by the concept of betrayal. It was not silent. It was alive, a realm of light, ablaze with beings of spirit and flame. Seraphim burned with worship, crying holy without rest. Cherubim guarded mysteries too sacred for even angelic tongues. Archangels moved like living pillars, carrying divine assignments through realms unseen. And among these archangels was Michael. He did not arrive in heaven with a crown. He was not born with a sword in hand. He was not created to be feared. He was created to be faithful. While other angels radiated with dazzling brilliance, Michael stood in quiet devotion. While some lifted wings in majestic praise, Michael bowed in stillness. He did not seek to shine. He sought to serve. And in that humble posture, heaven found its steadfast one. Others marveled at creation. Michael marveled at the Creator. Others rejoiced in their gifts. Michael rejoiced in obedience. That was his strength, not power, not wrath, but allegiance. His very name was a statement of loyalty carved into identity. Michael, who is like God, not a boast, a warning, a vow, a living anthem against pride. Even in perfection, he knew this truth. No matter how glorious an angel becomes, none can be like God. Heaven then was harmony, no jealousy, no ambition. Each angel knew their place, rejoiced at another's calling, and sang not to be heard, but to harmonize. If earth is where we fight, heaven was once where all rested. Yet even in that holy harmony, something unseen began to stir. For the Creator in his perfect love granted every angel one gift powerful enough to shape eternity, free will. The freedom to bow or to rise, to worship or to wander. For love without choice is not love, it is programming. It was within this freedom that pride found a voice. Among the angels was one whose splendor surpassed the rest, Lucifer, light-bearer, radiant, artful. His voice led choirs, his beauty reflected galaxies. But reflection was no longer enough. Admiration twisted to craving. Wonder shifted to hunger. Instead of, "How great is God?" pride whispered, "How great am I?" Pride does not shout. It whispers. And when pride whispers in heaven, even silence trembles. Lucifer no longer stood before the throne in awe. He stood in calculation. Why reflect glory when he could claim it? Why bow when others could bow to him? And though he spoke no open rebellion at first, heaven could feel the fracture. Worship that was once wholehearted became performance. Songs that once rose to God began to curve inward. A celestial tension thickened the air. Michael heard it, not with ears, but with spirit. He saw it rising, subtle as smoke, deadly as wildfire. Yet he did not argue. He did not accuse. He anchored himself in the one truth that shaped his existence. I will never rise above the one who created me. I will never touch the glory that is not mine. I will never ask, who is like me? Because my name will forever answer, who is like God? Heaven did not yet know war. But in that silent stance, Michael had already won his greatest battle. He was not named strongest because of combat. He was strongest because he would never betray. His strength was not held in his hands. It was rooted in his will. If every star fell, he would not move. If every angel wavered, he would not bend. Before swords were drawn, before the first rebellion broke the skies, Michael had already chosen. Not power, not position, presence. He would stand with God. And that decision, made long before any war, was the birth of heaven's mightiest warrior. Lucifer's unrest began like a hidden ripple, almost too delicate to notice. Heaven had never known deceit. It had never known a smile that concealed anything less than truth. But slowly, Lucifer's admiration of God turned inward. He began to seek the reflection of his own magnificence more than the glory of the one who made him. And though he spoke no treason aloud, his silence changed. His gaze held questions. His worship lacked weight. He began to walk apart from the choirs he once led. Angels who admired him began to follow, curious, unsure, not yet disloyal, but drawn to his brilliance, unaware of the shadow forming beneath it. He spoke softly, never openly, just ideas, just suggestions. Why must all glory flow upward? Why can we not share it? Are we not also glorious? Are we not made of fire and light? These were not accusations. They were seeds. Heaven, so used to unity, did not recognize division when it first appeared. But Michael did. Some angels, dazzled by Lucifer's grace, looked to him with awe. They mistook charm for leadership, display for depth. Lucifer did not need to command them. They drifted to him willingly. They loved his light, forgetting it was borrowed. Lucifer stood before the jeweled stones, once content to reflect God's radiance. Now, he studied himself. He began to imagine a throne that was not his, a kingdom with no Most High, a realm where worship returned not to God, but to him, and heaven felt it. The worship that once thundered with purity became thin. The melodies wavered. Silence, once holy, became heavy. Something was wrong. Michael stood by the throne, eyes lowered, heart steady. He felt the shift, not in sound, but in spirit. He saw angels glance to one another in uncertainty. He saw Lucifer's following grow, not by command, but by curiosity. And still, he said nothing. Because this was no ordinary test. It was not about might. It was about allegiance. This was the moment every angel would be measured, not by wings, not by splendor, but by loyalty. Would they follow brilliance, or stand with truth? Would they bow to charm, or cling to the one who formed them? Heaven began to divide, not by lines but by hearts. Lucifer finally spoke words that had never been uttered in eternity. I will ascend. He did not say them aloud for all to hear. He said them within himself. But all of heaven shook with the weight of them. I will ascend above the heights. I will set my throne on high. I will be like the Most High. In that single heartbeat, the most beautiful angel became the most dangerous. Not because he lost his power, but because he redirected it. Heaven stood at the edge of a war no one had ever seen. Not a war of swords, but of wills. And in that silent divide, one truth rose unshaken, the truth that lived within Michael. Who is like God? He did not draw a blade. He did not roar. He simply declared in spirit what would soon echo through all of creation. The first declaration of holy defiance, The war did not begin with a trumpet. It began with a tear, an unseen fracture across eternity. Heaven, a place once untouched by conflict, now trembled beneath the weight of pride. Lucifer stood no longer as the light-bearer, but as the challenger of the throne. His wings, once lifted in worship, now spread in defiance. The angels at his side were not monsters. They were once worshippers. They had not fallen in power, but in purpose. And that is what made them dangerous. Michael stood opposite him. There was no hatred in his eyes, only sorrow. For he was staring at someone he once sang beside. Yet loyalty demanded clarity, not sentiment. This was no longer a dispute of thought. It was a declaration. Who will remain with God? In that sacred tension, power filled the heavens. For the first time, an angel was entrusted with something terrifying, the execution of divine judgment. Not because God could not act, but because heaven itself needed a witness. Obedience had to be seen, loyalty had to be proven, strength had to be defined. Lucifer moved first. He did not strike with iron, he struck with deception, commanding his followers with promises of thrones, crowns, and kingdoms yet to be. He believed beauty could overthrow truth. He believed power could challenge purpose. And for a moment, to those who wavered, it seemed possible. But Michael, steady as eternity, raised no crown. He called no ambition. He simply stood and drew from the only source of authority that cannot be shaken. The Lord rebuke thee. And that, in that instant, became the dividing line of heaven. Lucifer fought with self. Michael fought with surrender. Lucifer roared, "I will." Michael answered, "God is." It was not Michael's might that made him fierce. It was his refusal to claim any glory. Lightning tore across the heavens. Wings clashed like hurricanes. Voices once entwined in worship now thundered in opposition. It was not chaos. It was judgment. The angels who followed Lucifer discovered a bitter truth. Without God's presence, their power was hollow. Their strength unraveled, like light without source. They struck, but their blows faltered. They soared, but their wings grew heavy. They had traded worship for war, and war was devouring them. Michael, fueled not by wrath but by righteousness, advanced with calm dominion. He was not a warrior by nature, he became one by necessity. Every victory he gained was not for triumph, but for preservation. This was not conquest, it was cleansing. Heaven was being purified. Lucifer, in his fury, shouted that he would never bow, that he would create his own throne, his own kingdom, his own angels. But Michael's answer did not shake. His very being echoed the anthem that would never fade. Who is like God? And with that truth, Lucifer's rise shattered. For the first time in creation, an angel fell. He did not descend gently. He was torn from the heights he once adored and cast downward with those who chose pride over presence. The heavens roared, not with celebration, but with lament. For beauty had been broken. Glory had become grief. When it was over, Michael did not lift his sword in victory. He lowered it in silence. He did not rejoice. For the strongest do not celebrate the fall of the lost. They mourn what was wasted. But from that war, one truth was engraved into eternity. Strength is not measured by how fiercely one fights, but by how faithfully one stands. After the fall of Lucifer and the shattering of harmony, heaven was forever changed. The echoes of that first war did not fade. They became law, etched into eternity, whispered in every corridor of heaven, carried in every wing beat of every loyal angel. And at the heart of that new order stood Michael. No longer was he simply an archangel. He had become something more. The defender, not of a throne, but of a promise. The universe was no longer only heaven. God had already spoken a new word, earth, a world of dust and breath, of weakness and wonder, where free will would walk in fragile flesh. And though the war in heaven had ended, its consequence would spill into this new realm. Lucifer, now Satan, could not conquer heaven. so he turned toward earth. If he could not overthrow the Almighty above, he would corrupt the beloved below. And that is when Michael's mission changed forever. His battleground was no longer only celestial, it became human. When humanity was formed, every angel watched. But Michael did more than watch, he guarded. For Satan had not accepted defeat. He had carried his hatred for God into hatred for those made in God's image. If he could not dethrone God, he would destroy God's children. The war continued, now through temptation, deception, and fear. But Michael, heaven's unwavering sentinel, was appointed to stand between mankind and the ancient enemy. He was no longer simply a warrior, he became a shield. When nations rose, Michael watched. When kingdoms flourished and fell, he stood near, unseen, but never absent. Scripture would later reveal what was always true. Michael was assigned not to stars or planets, but to people, to Israel, to the covenant, to every prophecy that carried the promise of redemption. In Daniel's visions, Michael appears not as conqueror, but as protector. Daniel trembled at visions of beasts and empires, but Gabriel spoke a name as comfort. Michael, your prince. Do you understand the weight of that? An archangel, mighty beyond comprehension, called the prince of a nation. Not the prince of power, the prince of covenant. While Satan strategized in shadows, Michael stood in silence, guarding destinies. Empires rose, Babylon, Persia, Greece, yet Michael remained unmoved. Daniel saw the unseen war, how kings on earth were only pawns to rulers in the hidden realm. The prince of Persia resisted Gabriel, but Michael came, not to destroy, but to make way. Every victory of God's people carried the unseen imprint of Michael's stand. He did not seek recognition, his name is scarcely spoken. But every time a prophet was preserved, every time Israel was not consumed, every time the covenant survived extinction, Michael had been there, sword drawn, unseen, undefeated. Why is he the strongest? Because strength is not the one who strikes hardest. Strength is the one who refuses to abandon the mission. Heaven trusted him with its holiest charge, not glory, not vengeance, but continuity. The promise must reach Bethlehem. The Messiah must be born. The cross must rise. And so long as that story was unfolding, Michael would not let darkness rewrite it. And even then, he is not finished. For Michael's war did not end in Daniel. It did not end at Calvary. It will not end until Revelation's final trumpet. John saw him again, at the end of time, not weary, not wounded, but ready, leading heaven's hosts once more against the dragon he once cast down. Michael is not a moment. Michael is a mandate. He has fought at the dawn of time. He will fight at the end of days. From the dawn of rebellion to the closing pages of prophecy, Michael stands as the silent guardian of God's plan. He is not merely an angel of war. He is heaven's vow in motion, the defender of covenant, the keeper of prophecy, the shield between darkness and the destiny of mankind. While Lucifer sought a throne, Michael sought obedience. While Satan fights to destroy, Michael fights to preserve. He has appeared at the turning points of history, unseen, unnamed, but unstoppable, ensuring that God's promise to humanity is never broken. In every era, his mission remains the same: protect the pathway of redemption. He defended heaven from pride. He defended Israel from extinction. He defends the church from deception. And when the final battle comes, he will rise once more, not for glory, but for completion. Michael reminds us that true strength is loyalty, true power is faithfulness, and the greatest warrior is the one who stands when all others fall. The story of Michael is not just about an angel. It is about a God who never abandons his purpose, and a servant who never abandons his post. Thank you for diving deep into this celestial journey, into mysteries often spoken of yet rarely understood. If this story moved you, enlightened you, or made you see heaven's war in a new light, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More revelations are coming. Stories of angels, ancient battles, hidden truths, and the mysteries Scripture seldom unveils. Stay with us, because the greatest war ever fought is not in myth. It lives in every soul. Until next time, remain steadfast, remain watchful, and remember, heaven still fights for you.